In the next session, we will be talking about satellite connectivity as a parallel digital backbone. Should India build a dual network national architecture? Satellite should no longer be viewed only as a last mile solution, but as a core layer of national connectivity alongside fiber and mobile networks. This session explores how SATCOM can enable resilient connectivity across remote regions, borders, industries, and critical infrastructure zones. I now invite the chair and moderator, Mr. Tilak, former director, DIPA, Director General DIPA, and the speakers, Dr. S.N. Gupta, Chairman, CMD, Blue Town, India, Mr. Lalit Singhal, Sales Consultant, AscendArc, Mr. Saurabh Malhotra, Practitioner in Public Policy and Economic Regulation. Please. I request everyone to please keep your mobile phones on silent, and I also request the delegates to minimize movement along the session, during the session, and for any assistance you can reach out to the SIA-INDIA volunteers. With that, I hand over the proceedings to the moderator. Sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I like to thank SIA-INDIA for to this session, and also my heartiest congratulations to SIA, particularly the President, Dr. Rao, Mr. Anil Prakash, and his team, having again, I think this is the 7th or 8th edition of SIA ISMC conference. I think it's growing day by day. It is growing. I think the whole team needs a kudos for that and congratulations. Today's theme for discussion is satellite connectivity as a parallel digital backbone. What is its strategic importance, technological evolution, and India's digital future? Let me just give you a little bit of flavor today of the panel, which I will tell my colleagues on the panel. I think the panel which has been brought in by the organizer is actually combination of regulators, the principals who are also in the satellite, and also the regulatory and policy experts, people who are there in this. I think this is an excellent panel, which we'll have around 35, maybe 40 minutes to hear from them. Let me just give you a little bit of brief how this subject is coming up on this. If you look at the satellite-based connectivity is rapidly emerging as a vital complementary layer. I'm using a word complementary layer to land-based communication system, thereby enhancing the overall resilience of the national digital networks. The conventional digital communication have long depended on the ground infrastructure, and they will continue to depend because such as fiber, mobile base station, microwave relays, undersea cable towers. Yet such systems routinely encounter difficulties because I have been from this background. We know what are the ROW challenges, what are the terrain related issues on this, and also the difficulties in isolated geographies, disaster affected zones, coastal waters, hilly landscape, frontal temporaries. Now, contemporary satellite technology are increasingly stepping in to try and fill these gaps, offering wide-ranging, dependable, scalable communication that ground infrastructure may sometime or cannot deliver. Now, looking at the rapid development of LEO, that is the low Earth orbit satellite fleets, high throughput satellite called HTS, software configurable payloads, cloud space integrated architecture has elevated satellite communication from a specialized niche service to a competitive mainstream broadband platform. Today, satellite systems are capable of handling broadband internet access, enterprise-grade connectivity, IoT development, mobility services, defense communication, emergency coordination work, and digital public administration. For a nation like us, that is India, the strategic value of satellite connectivity is immense. It holds the potential to close the rural divide, bolster digital preparedness, secure remote border areas, enable intelligent infrastructure, and serve as a backup layer for critical national communication asset. Satellite networks are therefore no longer seen merely as supplementary technology, but are increasingly being positioned as independent, parallel, digital backbone capable of sustaining future digital economies. Not taking much time, I would just start like this. I will request my fellow panelists, about 2 minutes each, they can give their introduction, and then followed by a thematic discussion that we have. Thank you so much, and I'll now request my colleague S.N. Gupta to give his brief introduction. Although he has many hats, he doesn't need any introduction, but still I would request him to give his introduction himself. S.N.
For your kind words. Actually, I am indeed grateful to our friend Anilji to invite me in this August gathering and giving me an opportunity to speak. As Dua Sahab have already mentioned, actually, I am nowadays called Professor S.N. Gupta. I am a professor of practice in South Asian University, which is the world's only government university which is owned by 8 countries and led by India. That is my latest hat, actually, if you want to know. But here I am invited as a chairman and managing director of my startup called Blue Town India. It is solving the problem of connectivity in the rural India, actually, in a public-private partnership mode, actually. And that is where I come with the experience or how the satellite is playing a role. It is badly needed there, actually. Satellite is not required in urban India. It is required in rural. And without satellite, we cannot actually manage the job of connecting the unconnected in rural. So it will come in my presentation also. Otherwise, I have now 45 years experience in telecommunication, which includes working with government, working with regulator, working with MNCs, corporates, and for last 13 years, I have become what they call me a social entrepreneur. And I'm having about 10 startups which I'm mentoring, and I have skin in the game in that. Thank you, Dua sir.
Thank you. Thank you, S.N., for a very humble introduction. Thank you so much. You could have spoken hours together, but thank you so much. Now I request Lalit to introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank SIA for giving us an opportunity to be on such a panel where we can share really that what's happening in the satellite world. And as Mr. Gupta said, rightly said, that satellite is a mandatory part. It's not anymore supplementary. It's a complementary part of our whole ecosystem. When we talk about the space, so satellite is one of the part. Now, I've been in the satellite industry for more than 20 years, and currently I'm associated with a company called AscendArc. When I joined this company, AscendArc, with the motto they have, when you see the presentations and all, they say satellite is cheaper than fiber. So I couldn't believe that, but over the time when I learned from them, the technology, the design, the architecture this company has come up with is truly a different satellite design, which can really deliver a very low cost, high throughput capacity. When you say the low cost means that when a connectivity can make affordable to a person who is living far in a rural place, who is earning less than like $20, or I would say, let's say 2,000, 3,000 are minimum wages. So our motto of this company was that our founder, Mr. Chris McLean, has an experience of more than 30 years in the satellite industry. And he's been working for last 10 years on this geostationary satellite technology, that how geo satellites can make much more affordable with delivering the higher throughput of capacity. So SATCOM is purely a geo satellite manufacturer. We are manufacturing geo satellite based out of US. The company was founded in 2023, but the founders has a vast experience of more than 3 decades. And we are coming, satellite is a one subsystem of a whole ecosystem, one part of the whole ecosystem. There are many other things, satellite, the ground station, terminals and all. So we have some interesting discussion going forward where we'll be talk about the other part of the whole ecosystem, that how this whole ecosystem can be optimized in terms of the commercials and technically that it can be made available and affordable by each and everybody. So that's I want to stop myself with that introduction, and would like to give it back to Mr. Dua for further discussions.
Thank you, Lalit. Can I request Saurabh? A good friend of mine, having known him for many years, and right from the Etisalat days and then GSM and Airtel, he's a policy and regulatory expert. It will be good to hear from you, your introduction first and then later. Over to you.
Sir, thank you. Namaste and good morning to everyone. Really thankful to SIA-INDIA for this opportunity to participate in the panel. And I think one of the mentors from the industry where I come from, the telecommunication background, Dua sir, we have learned a lot from seniors like him in our close to 2 decades of career. So I come from a background of starting with investment banking, equity research, finally moving into economic regulation of utility industry, primarily telecommunication. So my areas have been primarily working on cost models, valuation of public goods, and related fields, of course, public policy. Recently, I think I decided to move and become more independent practitioner in the field of economic regulation and policy. I think from the perspective of this session and the way things are shaping up in India on the satellite front, it's very important and pertinent to have these conversations going on. And really, India has brought in a good mix of panel, the stakeholders and participation, given that India has just started its steps. Just 5 years ago, 2020, we opened up the sector. So looking at the participants, the ecosystem which is converging, I think it's a stellar effort at the end of India that within 5 years or 6 years where we have reached. Now, of course, this is the start of a journey. And the idea of this panel, probably where I would like to bring in my perspective, would be as also a competition analysis expert. What Duaji just highlighted, that it is a complementary feature of the sector, and how we as an industry can probably play that role between the terrestrial ecosystem as well as the satellite ecosystem to take this forward and not just make a mark in India, but also at a global level. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Saurabh. Before I go into the question, I just want to question myself first. That is satellite connectivity ready to become India's parallel digital backbone? That's number one. How can satellite connectivity accelerate digital inclusion? Just to start, satellite connectivity is increasingly ready to function as a parallel digital backbone, complementing terrestrial network through resilience, redundancy, universal coverage, disaster recovery, strategic communication. LEO constellations have significantly reduced latency, improved broadband performance, enabling satellite system to become a core component of the digital national infrastructure. Now, satellite broadband can connect remote villages. This is regarding the digital inclusion. Islands, mountainous regions, forests, deserts, border areas where terrestrial deployment is difficult. It supports education, telemedicine, e-governance, agriculture, financial inclusion, and economic development. Now, I'll just go over to my colleague Lalit. Very basic question, since you've been there almost 20 years in the satellite, and you're still working to reinvent India, coming back with bringing satellite into India. Can satellite connectivity strengthen India's national security and disaster resilience? Over to you, Lalit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this question. I think this is an important question when we talk about the national security and disaster resilience. So yeah, when we talk about the satellites, so satellites has the ubiquitous coverage. They have the coverage in the such a terrain where the terrestrial reach is beyond imagination, and if the possibility is there, then it's going to be very much costly. So with the new satellite design, the architecture coming up with the high throughput, the coverage, the flexibility, we call the software-defined satellites, or we call the way you configure the satellite to cover and put the capacity in the required regions and all. So the satellite has that power of capabilities, the feature set, where all these areas can pretty well covered in a fastest manner and in a much cost-effective manner. With the kind of capacity, those applications in defense, security, border surveillance, disaster resiliency, disaster preparedness, all these applications can easily be catered on the satellite. With the demand these applications has for, couple of tens of Mbps, that can easily be delivered. But now with the satellite, the high throughput satellite, we can deliver much more capacity for these applications in the different regions as well. Extending a terrestrial link to these places is really challenging. The mountainous region, the terrains, and the fiber cuts would really create a lot of problems for this kind of application. When you talk about the defense sector is highly resilient, more concerned about the security, more concerned about the reliability, availability. SLAs are very, very high. And without having a satellite as a backup or as a primary, you can use it as a primary as well in where the terrestrial is not there, and the backup as well where the terrestrial is there. So this really enable the quality of service, availability for such applications, and with the demand they need to serve for this kind of application, like in terms of throughputs and latency.
Thank you very much for highlighting. I think it's an important issue that brought that yes, satellite can do that. And in terms of your emergencies, mountainous region, forests, I think satellite not only will complement, but can also be used as a primary. Thank you so much. Now I turn over to my colleague, right-hand colleague, Mr. S.N. Gupta, who is a regulatory expert. From his background, he's been also in TRAI for many years. Besides that, are the current regulatory framework adequate for emerging satellite ecosystem? That is one. And second is, coupled with this, I'll go first question for him. Should India's strategy for integrating satellite into 5G and future 6G network? What are your views, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, both the questions are very close to my heart. But luckily for me, you as well as Lalit have answered or put the words in my mouth to speak on these two topics, actually. Regarding this integration of satellite network with our 5G, 6G, actually, that is a given thing. As you know, when we talk of 5G and 6G, we are talking of access, actually. We are not talking of the backhaul or backbone, where I will like to speak more. 5G, 6G, of course, integration is already there maybe in name of standardization. The 3GPP already, 3GPP release 16, actually treats your satellite network also like a terrestrial network. They don't distinguish between a non-terrestrial and terrestrial network as far as access is concerned. So it is a done job. But when you talk of the backhaul, and actually we are talking about whether satellite can be a parallel backbone for the country. Actually, according to me, two things are there. When we talk about satellite as a technology or as a service, we have to see, or any new service for that matter, actually, whether it is solving a problem, actually, whether it is solving a problem. So that is where I'll start from, and then whether it can be complementary or competing or a parallel, actually. And there, so first of all, what problem it can solve, which conventional technology cannot solve. And that is the connecting the unconnected in rural India. Actually, whatever we may be saying and whatever data is there, it is on record that 6% of the country's villages out of 6 lakhs are still unconnected. Unconnected in that sense, not with data alone, even with voice. There is no kind of connectivity. That is called technically non-feasible with the terrestrial thing. Neither fiber is there, nor wireless is there, nor 4G, 5G is there. 40,000 villages. So that is a big number, though percentage looks small, actually. So that is where satellite play a very important role. Actually, satellite is the only option there if you want to reach or if you want to serve these 40,000 villages. So that from that, if we take satellite, according to me, when we are talking of a backbone part and integration part, so it should not be treated as a supplementary or a parallel. It should be treated as a main thing, main part of the national backbone. We are talking of national backbone. You have heard about NOFN. You have heard about BharatNet, actually. That is what the objective was. 100% of the country should have been connected with the backbone, either with fiber, though it was planned with fiber. And we are talking of this for last 13 years. 2013, the project was sanctioned. Till today, only 2.25 lakhs villages have got the fiber. But that does not mean other villages are not connected. Other villages are also connected, but they are connected with wireless. But 40,000 are not connected. And one thing which actually Lalit also mentioned, when you talk of a backbone, it is different than the access. Backbone, it has to have SLA, quality of service. And do you know what is the availability requirement of a backbone network? It is called 5.9. 5.9 means 99.999. That is a standard requirement of any backhaul. And do you know, actually, I feel very ashamed and guilty when I talk the number of our country backbone. For last 13 years, we are pumping every year about 1 lakh crore there. And our national backbone, first of all, it has reached only less than half of the nation. That itself is a fault. The other thing is our backbone is nowhere near 2 nines also. Nowhere near 99. Even 99 is not sufficient. But we are not near that. So what we are talking of 99.999. What is required for that? When you want to actually improve the availability of your network, so you need diversity. You can say duplicate paths. So we will not call the satellite as a parallel. It will be a part of the backbone for covering those 6% of the nation first. It has to be the prime there. Not only that, to help us to achieve the backbone availability beyond 2.9, which we are today, taking it to 5.9. That is where the satellite. So it has to be a part of the main backbone network, not as a supplementary, not as a complementary, though it is complementary. So as a redundant thing, as a parallel, whatever you call it, it has to be integrated there. And that is where, like in the tenders, government should actually give that option. This should be given as a technology neutral option. Government should tell you have to have this backbone of 5 nines. You use whatever technology you want.
Okay.
Some places you have to use satellite. So that is where I'll stop, Dua sir.
Thank you so much, Gupta ji. I fully agree with you that India should embrace NTN satellite backhaul network. Is fortunately or unfortunately, if you look at the NTP 2025, you don't have more than 5 million lakh kilometers of fiber which is there. And fiberization has been the hallmark for NTP, all the NTPs, and NTP 2025 just says that it is just around 50 lakh kilometers, which is what I think Gupta Sahab they brought it out, and it's a necessary, very necessary, whether you want to embrace 5G, 6G, integrate with the cyber. After all, where are you going to put fiber? If you don't reach the fiber, you'll have to use the satellite. And there are areas where there are, one issue is unconnected, the other issue is unserved. So these are two things which need to be actually connected through the complementary or supplementary or whatever you want. Thank you so much, Mr. Gupta. Now I go over to my friend Saurabh, who has been a regulatory expert. Is the current regulatory framework adequate for emerging satellite ecosystem?
Thank you, sir. Before I go into that, I think I'll just supplement 1 or 2 points what Lalit ji and Gupta sir said. I think it is very important that satellite actually becomes mainstream in certain areas and certain decision making. Like there are areas in Northeast, India has 7,500 kilometers of coastline. So of course, maritime is an important factor where we need to have this connectivity always on in flight systems. So of course, it is very important that we actually look at not as a competing technology. In certain areas, I think it has to be the fundamental technology, at least, of course, as one of the options available. Now, coming back to your question in terms of how is our regulatory framework shaping up in satellite overall and probably satellite communication per se in specific. As I highlighted, I think we are talking this thing in the backdrop of, I think in the morning, Chairman Goenka also highlighted 1.75 trillion of IPO of SpaceX. Now, that is one aspiration, but look at where probably the US has achieved over the years, over the decades, where private participation had been there, the government has been backing up. India just opened its sector in 2020 during the COVID times. Till that, it was primarily the government needs served very well and competitively by ISRO. So starting from there and sitting at 2026, I think there are a lot of decisions which have been taken on the policy front. We have the New Space Policy 2023, which was done after extensive consultation of the stakeholders. From the satellite communication perspective, there has been rounds of discussion and enablement done by the Department of Telecommunication on licensing piece. There's the latest consultation going on by the TRAI on satellite communication as a service, network as a service piece. Then there are satellite gateways which have been elaborated and opened for the sector. The GMPCS licenses have been enabled from the perspective of the orbit authorization in space has been formed as a sectoral regulator to manage the private capital private enterprises, where the non-government entities, the NGs, have been enabled and brought into the ecosystem. So from perspective of policy dimensions, I think things are falling in place. Of course, policy is always an evolving framework which can never be static. It will always refine, reform, learn from international experiences, learn from our own bottlenecks and challenges, and we'll always be. Of course, technology will always move probably a step ahead of the regulators or the regulatory thinking. But given that we have just opened up the sector, I think from a standpoint of policy and regulation, we are there. Now is the time for the stakeholders, investors to seriously look at the market and start putting up their capital into the ecosystem. The developers, the satellite launch vehicles, the communication service provider, they should start looking and building up their partnerships with the global ecosystem players, whether it on the content side, whether on the capacity side, whether on the launch side, so that they are ready for this entire ecosystem to take off. So there are trials going on. I think we have been hearing some of the stakeholders since yesterday. A lot of young startups have been able to work on that. So that confidence has only come because we have put up a framework out here from a policy and regulatory field. Of course, we may not be perfect, we may not be the best yet, but we have made a beginning on a very confident note, on a very clarity-oriented note. Yes, I think the learnings that we should take in reforming that is, for instance, I come from a telecommunication background. I think Dua sir, who knows it better than you, a lot of challenges from a bureaucratic mindset which at times comes up. And it's not because of, I think because we always try to learn and adopt how probably the other markets have evolved. So now we are probably at a stage in first time in SATCOM where we can lead. We need to be duly protect our ecosystem, but also be very open to aspire for competing in the global world. That can only happen when from a process perspective, we are able to take risks within the guardrails that we set up as regulators and the policymakers, but also giving that confidence to our people to take those steps boldly without any concerns for, okay, whether I'll falter here and there'll be penalties which might come on to me. Of course, due safeguards have to be ensured.
Thank you, Saurabh. What I understand from you, that the regulation had to be more streamlined, although a lot has been done. It is like this, na dil मांगे more. जो कुछ हो जाता है इसके बाद थोड़ा सा कुछ और हो जाए तो और भी अच्छा है यार, अभी ये भी रह गया, अभी वो भी रह गया. तो I think what is required is a little more streamlining of the approvals, harmonized spectrum, and also to ensure that the regulation which is made is an investor friendly, which is very important, because investor will only come when the regulation, the policies and everything is a user friendly on that. I have seen cases where the investors ran away because of many regulatory hurdles. And bank guarantee nahi milna, this approval is not there, that approval is. I think the nutshell, ease of doing has to be made more practical. Now we'll turn over to Lalit. I think he's trying to explore India. I have one very typical. What business model do you think will drive your sustainable growth once you finally decide to settle down and make your presence in India? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Again, this is a very interesting question. And, when we talk about the business model, so before I answer your question, I would like to say something what we, as an AscendArc came up in the market with. And I started, like initially I told you that we really would like to make the service connectivity, satellite connectivity affordable to each individual. Now, with that motto, if we consider the business case, there are so many business cases which are very viable for the satellite perspective. Mr. Gupta mentioned, Saurabh ji also mentioned about the aviation, maritime, I would say the consumer, enterprise, and backhaul, the last mile. That's where the satellite is one of the indigenous, it plays the indigenous role. Now, the business model, there are the two types of business model. I would say one is the quantity based, and another is the quality based. Quantity, less revenue over the long-term revenues, and quality is a less term revenue, short-term revenue. So when we talk about the aviation market, that's where the quality is more important, the service quality is more important, the high throughput capabilities are more important, and they need the seamless connectivity. But the revenues, the profits are very high in this segment, the aviation, and you talk about the maritime. And where the other segments we call the consumer market, there's a volume is great, but the ARPU is small. But this is another market which we need to take care of. Now the third market which is dominating from a satellite perspective is IoT. Which is very important, and going forward, we had certain topics in the yesterday panels about, direct to device and IoT for monitoring. So IoT is another emerging application in the market, which is again a big volume, not only the volume, I would say the big volume game, but again the RPUs are small. So satellite perspective, satellite fits into all kind of business model. It need to be focused by the satellite provider, service operator, that where they want to focus. They want to focus on the short-term revenue, or they want to focus on the long-term engagement with the revenues over the period of time, or they want to play around the volume game. So that depends really how you see the market and where you really would like to push. But the satellite perspective, this is really a fit for all kind of business model today we have. Definitely terrestrial is, when there was no terrestrial infrastructure, most of the telcos, and they were running their backhauling over the satellites. But with the reach of the fiber and the different regions, now the satellite is getting replaced by the terrestrial for their backhauling purpose. But still, as Mr. Gupta said, places like villages where the satellite is must, and still there are many places where a satellite is a backbone for providing the connectivity. So satellite cannot stay away from any of the business model. Wherever there's business model, definitely it's a priority. It becomes a priority, whether it is primary or a backup, or as a complementary, or as a parallel service. That we have to see what business case we want to run.
Thank you, Lalit. I go over to Saurabh. You want to add anything in to show that it becomes a sustainable model? Quick one.
Sure, sir. Just two quick points here. I think from a service-oriented perspective, I think just like we have seen in telecom, that after a certain point in time, the network becomes the utility, and it's really the service side where you need to bring in the perspective to make it sustainable. From that perspective, I think even if we look at the areas where I think Gupta sir highlighted was the 40,000 unconnected villages, or say terrains which is very difficult to lay the models. I think if you see from a geospatial perspective, there are hyperspectral imagery which is going to add a lot of value. So from that perspective, now today there are satellites which are capable, and once you analyze that, you can actually estimate the crop yields. You can look at from a perspective of how probably floods are going to shape up, how the lakes displacements are happening. You can actually count trees, so agriculture, aqua, fishing. If we go from those perspectives, even those areas where you can actually add value, of course, this is a journey which has been started. The second point, if I can take a cue from Lalitji's point, I think he's absolutely right. If I see it from a triangle perspective, there are three layers. The very bottom layer is the consumer broadband piece, which probably we'll see at some point in time, where we are all very looked up to, like so OneWeb, Starlinks, which are there in that space. But that is a low value. India is a market which operates at a $3 ARPU in telecom. Whereas I think if we would have read the SpaceX IP documents, like $50 ARPU that they get in there. So I mean, to compete in a market which is 1/10 of their current ARPUs, that is something which will be a challenge, but it's a volume-based game. Then we move up the value chain is where you have cellular backhaul kind of thing, where you can probably enable the telecom towers through 5G-like connectivity via satellite in such areas. Then if we go to the upper tier is primarily where defense is there, the maritime, the civil aviation, where value is there. But then these are very strategic at times, and which are long-term relationships that you build over a period of time. So I think probably as an ecosystem, that's how probably it needs to be worked out, and I fully agree with Lalitji's perspective on that.
Thank you. I think any model that we've been working, coming back from the mobile market, I think there are 3A which is very important: availability, affordability, and accessibility. All these parameters, whether you take the mobile system or you take the satellite system, since you're going to reach to the terrains where I think that these are very important. Thank you so much. I turn over to my friend Gupta, a regulatory expert, and two issues on, do you want to add any more into ease of doing business, attracting the investors, number one. Number two, on the spectrum side. These two questions, I think no better person than you can answer them.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding inviting the investors or attracting the investor, we have done a great job, as Sam also have been mentioning. The regulatory certainty or clarity is almost there. What the foreign investor need, always a regulatory clarity and continuity or stability. So that, according to me, as far as satellite is concerned, lot of debate, lot of work has happened, and now it is settled. Like, first thing was whether you will auction the spectrum or allocate it administratively. That was done deal through new Telecom Act actually, and then regulator and all that. So that is settled. So now the investors know that it will continue. The decision is already taken, though the final decision of allocating the spectrum for access purpose, even for on administrative basis, that also, because ultimately again the pricing becomes an issue. In the auction, pricing is not an issue because it is market discovered pricing. But when you have to do administratively, then you have to decide the pricing. And that is where the regulator have done its job, and it is pending with the DOT or government in that way. But that is there. So according to me, there is no. The second thing is that market, actually, and market is huge. When you talk of India, you don't have to ask for the demand side of it. And especially when I'm telling 6% of the country don't have terrestrial network at all. So that is the key for the satellite. And if satellite becomes the mainstream, a part of the integrated in the part of the main backbone in a technology neutral manner, actually. The backbone does not have to be fiber only. Actually, the government have to change the definition. It has to be technology neutral. Once they make it technology neutral, that means satellite also. So there is no question of that. As far as spectrum is concerned, Mr. Chairman, Sam have already mentioned also, you have also touched upon. Now it is a done deal. Only thing is the government have to accept or modify the TRI recommendation, which are waiting, and then should not be a issue of any type actually. And because you are talking of the investment, yesterday, these IPO, the mother of all the IPOs of Elon Musk, actually, two words were very key there. Yesterday I read, can you know now the satellite communication is not a technology, not a service, not a network. It has been treated as an asset class like gold, land, equity. And the second thing which is very interesting, actually, there is a normally we call about the net worth. In this case, the Elon Musk is called his GDP, a human being treated as a country. So that is what satellite can do wonders actually. So I'll stop at that.
Thank you so much. A quick one, because then we are running against the time. Now, anyone can answer that is how can a public-private partnership accelerate adoption? Just 30 seconds each.
All of us can do it. You start, Lalit.
So,
30 seconds.
Okay. So this PPP model is I believe it's very important. Like I was mentioning, Mr. Chairman, before the session that, I've been to the many countries and worked with the government officials very closely, especially with the Department of Communication Technology. And, there are certain restrictions from the government perspective that they cannot come ahead and do many things. That's where this PPP, public-private partnership models really fits very well. And it's not only, people think that this may be a financial challenge or financial issues. It's not about that. It's about the implementation. It's about the execution of the programs. And we see today in India, there's a lot of things are being transferred to the private sector. Recently, ISRO also opened the expression of interest of transferring their GSLV, LVM3 technology to other private players so that they can boost up this rocket manufacturing and launch vehicle things. So seeing that it's not the tech, it's not financial, it's not technical, it's all about the execution. Yesterday I was hearing on some of the panel that we really want to see technology is available. I believe the finance commercials are available. It's all about that how soon we can deliver things. That becomes a challenge. And from the PPP model, I believe that is a way to roll out the things much faster and evaluate the market, get the right technology on the top, on the table, and make it possible and make it available for everybody. That's what I would like to say. And
Thank you. Over to Gupta Sahab.
Yeah, thank you, Saab. And actually what Lalit have told, I also agree. But when we talk of satellite and the problem it is solving of the rural India, so I will like that we should add one more P to the PPP, and that is the panchayat. Actually 4P. Panchayat, public-private partnership, because the 40,000 panchayats are having nothing. Not even a cellular tower. So they should also be partners. So right-of-way issue and all that and is done actually. And also one more thing, Chairman Saab, for PPP, we should adopt, because in PPP the problem is on implementation, lot of litigation happens and all that. So there is a concept, and that is what now I'm wearing blockchain hat, smart contract. Actually smart contract is a attribute of blockchain where if you use that, any agreement get auto-implemented. No litigation, no arbitration, no time overrun, no cost overrun. So that is what I'll recommend.
Thank you. Over to you, Saurabh.
I think just 2-3 things here. One is from a PPP perspective, it is very important that in these projects, the risk is distributed fairly. Because sometimes we have seen in certain projects, for instance, if I take an example from railways, is that the government basically transfers its risk to the private sector. I think there has to be a rational way of how do we allocate risk, because at the end of the day, it is the risk factor which cannot be taken by one party alone, that there has to be a mechanism. From a specifically coming to the sector that we are talking about, SATCOM, I think 3-4 in ecosystem, if it look at, there are 3-4 people, entities who need to play their part. Government, of course, from policy perspective, spectrum allocation perspective, FDI policies, that is one part that they play their role in. The telcos play a part in terms of the layer of distribution. They become the biggest distributor and reaching out because they have relationship with the customers and the billing systems, etc. We look at the satellite companies, of course, in terms of the capacities, what they create over in the space, that how that get distributed, so they have their role. They integrate and they work with the ecosystem. Then startups and innovation ecosystem, I think they need to come out with the new technology, new areas, new ideas, test labs, etc., which need to become, which is the fifth part, which is academia, the testing labs, the experts, the researchers, that they're continuously working on that. When these all 3, 4, 5 ecosystem come together and work in a national vision to make it a success, I think probably we'll see even PPPs work very beautifully. And I think we have already started seeing some of that thing. From a testing lab perspective and certification, I would say definitely we need to have skilled manpower also. A lot of time, this is a new sector emerging. We need to focus on the skill side of this, not just from a hardcore STEM technologies, but also on the testing labs. Because we need to expedite and churn out approvals for our equipments. If we really want to work on the indigenous manufacturing, we need to churn out approvals pretty fast. That can only happen if our people are equipped, they have the right tools, and we have focus on turnaround times. So that is what I might focus on.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to close it quickly, I was reading this, SIA-INDIA, India Space, re-imaging space, reinventing collaboration, realizing the next era. I think what will it look like looking ahead of, let's say, 10 years down the line? India is expected to operate an integrated ecosystem which will comprise of fiber, 6G, 5G, Wi-Fi, satellite, AI-driven network, cloud computing, etc., etc. With this, I don't think we have a time for question. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, my fellow panelists.
Thank you. Thank you for a highly insightful session. I request the dignitaries to join us for a photograph.